I'm about to drop a podcast on you, wholesome people. Welcome back to the Dani podcast. It's good to be with you. This is episode 60, finally. So, I've been thinking about what's permanent and what's temporary. And I think that I'm just going to give you a bunch of examples of things that I thought were permanent in my life and they ended up being temporary, and things that felt or feel, I guess felt and feel temporary, and that um, are permanent. And the ultimate goal is basically that things that feel permanent are not, and things that feel temporary are not. And so you can't really go by that feeling. And ultimately, since things that are permanent aren't permanent and most things are temporary, they're the same, they feel the same. I guess the first thing that I can think of is I remember living with my uncle after my dad passed away, and I still have some memories of that, and I remember it being more on the permanent side. And when I say that, I mean I remember it being a long time, but I was a kid, and so when you're a kid, you experience time differently. Things just seem longer than what it is. And so recently, within the last couple of years, not even a couple of years, but I would say within the last year, maybe even the last 6 months, I was talking to my mother and my sisters about it, and my mother mentioned how it was only 3 months. So 3 months felt like a really long time. But of course, as soon as you become a functioning adult, you realize 3 months is not a long time um, at all. And so that's the first thing that I can kind of think of, that I guess in retrospect, it felt like a really long time. And in reality, it actually really wasn't a long time at all. The second thing that I can think of that felt permanent, and I've brought this up in other podcasts, but I used to play in a Mexican band. The band is called, because it still exists, Banda Caliente. I'm saying it slowly for people who don't speak Spanish. It roughly translates to hot band or the hot band. But the genre, you can either call it banda sinaloense or banda de viento. It's a subgenre of Mexican music. Well, I started doing that. I started doing that around 15. And when I was 15, I did it for 3 years, 15, 16, 17, 18, 3 years and some change. And back then, it felt like it was permanent. It felt like, yo, I'm gonna do this, if not the rest of my life, for a long time. And then I only ended up doing it like 3 years. And so that feeling was wrong. It was erroneous. I was mistaken because I didn't have knowledge of the future. And tied to that, what felt temporary was, once I quit, the plan was always to go back, and the quitting felt temporary, but so far it's been permanent. So I quit, and I was going to work for a little bit and get money to get a car and then go back. And then after I got the car, I was like, well, I should get more money and go back to school. And then I went back to school and I didn't go back. And then I started getting promoted, and so I didn't go back. And then started dating my wife, and then I didn't go back. Got married, didn't go back. Now I've got kids, didn't go back. And so this plan that was supposed to be temporary and that felt temporary has become more permanent. So you can't trust that feeling of like, this feels temporary, this feels permanent. Because I feel like feel like the longer I live, the more I'm just realizing that everything is temporary, and the only thing that's really permanent is like death, right? Like the death of my father was permanent. He's never coming back. Um, the your past, your past is dead in a really real sense. Like all you have is the present. The future isn't like born yet. So like just everything in the past is permanently fixed in the sense that it's permanently gone and it's permanently like dead. That's like not coming back. Right. Um, I think a common example is like a long day at work feels like it's never going to end. Um, if you're just not in the mood to work or you're going through stuff, it just feels like I'm never going to get through this day. And of course, then you do, and you can't trust that feeling. There's this what do you call it? From there's this quote from The Office from Andy Bernard. Excuse me, I burped. But this is what do you call it? It's not live and in color. It's definitely in color, but this is raw, as they say. Um, so yeah, he talks about the quote is like, I wish you could know when you're in the good old days before you've already left them." And tied with um, long days at work that feel permanent, that you're never going to get through, and then you do end up getting through them. Like I'm sure that you've had jobs that you didn't necessarily like, but you liked the people that you were working with, and since you didn't like the job, it felt like permanent. Like I'm never going to get out of here, I'm never going to find another job. And because that feeling that feeling of I don't like this job and I need to get out of here, and it feels like I'm never going to get out of here, because you're so fixated on that, you don't realize that once you leave, you're going to miss the people that you were working with. And it's only in retrospect, some people, not all of them, it's only in retrospect that you realize, yo, like it felt like I was going to be there permanently, so I didn't. So I took the moments with those people for granted, and now I can't go back. And now, usually, I mean, there's people who put in effort to keep in touch, but most of the time, you know, friends or friends that were friends while you work somewhere, usually, you know, you kind of that relationship kind of severs once you move on. The next thing that I can think of was, community college for me felt permanent. It felt like I was never going to get out of there. And now every time I drive by that building, that's what I mentioned to my wife. She's probably sick of hearing it. Like when I pass by there, I'm like, yeah. But it's a good reminder that like not everything is permanent. Most things are temporary. But I'll say, yo, when I was going there, it just felt like I was never gonna get out of there. I went that particular community college. I don't know how all community colleges work, but that particular community college, I think if you took like 16 credits per semester in spring and in winter, and then in spring and in winter, you'd be done in 2 years. So you're supposed to be done in 2 years. It took me 4 years because I went fall 2012, and then I took a year off. That's all I can handle, one semester, and then I took a year off. And then I went fall 2013, and then something happened in fall 2013 when I was like, yo, I gotta take this serious. And then I just went, because I was going part-time, I wasn't taking the 16 credits. And then I just went every semester until I finished. So then I went spring 2014, summer 2014, fall 2014, spring, summer, fall 2015, and then spring 2016 I finished. So that's the next thing that I thought it felt permanent, and then I was wrong. And then to go back to what I was talking about previously, I was at a company like 10 years, And the last year or two there, I was very unhappy, and it felt like I was never gonna get it. It felt like I was permanently there. And that's why I mentioned that, like, I don't miss the job, but I do miss the people that I worked with. And you know, you take those relationships for granted in the present. It's only in retrospect that you like appreciate those relationships. And then, as I've mentioned before, I uh, I was going for my philosophy degree, and because I was going part-time, it felt like, yo, I'm never gonna finish. It felt the same way as, and now it really feels like I'm never gonna finish. But I do have the mindset now that that's like not necessarily true. If I if it's in God's will for me to remain at that school and finish, I think I only have like 33 credits to go. But I am no longer attending because, I mean, like I said, this is raw. I just can't afford it, and I refuse to get any student loans. My wife had we had some student loans, and we paid them off, and we never want to get back together with them. Like that Taylor Swift song says. I have to send this episode to my friend Gina, who's a Swiftie. She'll appreciate this. I'll try to like find out where I say this so I can just send her the timestamp so she can just like watch that part. But it's not, I don't know if this is permanent or not. It feels permanent, but I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. And, you know, maybe one day that'll happen for me. I think one thing that most humans experience is every time we have to make a decision about our life, applying for a job and then getting the job, and then deciding whether you are going to accept it or not, deciding to go back to school, deciding to start working out. Like, whenever we have to make a decision, that decision feels permanent. Like, yo, once I make this decision, I can't go back. But that's obviously not true. You can go back, or you can adjust a plan, or I've mentioned this before, like last year, I only released 2 podcast episodes. And every time I didn't, like, not every time, but oftentimes when I would think about that, it felt like permanent, like, yo, like that's it. I'm never gonna record a podcast again, or I'm not gonna be able to grow the podcast or whatever. But like, obviously I could record 2 podcast episodes for the rest of my life and it'll be fine. You know, like it doesn't have to be like this permanent, it doesn't have to be like this permanent thing. Now and then one thing that also felt permanent was like part of my teen years. So probably from like 14 to 19, those 5 years, it felt like I was just gonna be that age for the rest of my life. And like, obviously, like, I was wrong. And I'm sure maybe a lot of people, I'm 31 now, I'm sure maybe a lot of people my age, maybe a lot of people that are 41, 51, 61, 71 feel that way. That was that first. And then from like 20 to 27, that also felt permanent. Like, yo, I'm gonna be this age for the rest of my life. Obviously not true. I think post 27 is when I started realizing, like, yo, like, I'm getting older, and I'm gonna get older the rest of my life. But the way that I like to see it now is because it's true. I like things that are true. If I have one quirky thing about me, or if I have like this obsessive compulsive thing about me, or if I have this obsession about me, it's that I like I love the truth. Like there's something about, like I'm talking about like objective, absolute truth, which is what it, that's ultimately what convinced me not to make this, because I know people, like I get it. Like people think that I don't get it, but I get it. People don't like talking about God, Jesus, Catholicism, Christianity, religion, whatever. I get it. But all I'm going to say is that's ultimately why I became Catholic, because I think that is like, from what I looked into, from what I studied, from what I researched, from the arguments that I'm familiar with, it seems to me that it's true. So that's why I had to become. I didn't want to, but I had to. So, but back to the age thing. So I'm 31, right? So the way that I look at it, because I think it's true, is that at every moment, you're the oldest you've ever been, but at the same time, you're the youngest that you're ever going to be again. So whatever it is that you're trying to do, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, whatever, you have to start working towards it now. Because as the saying goes, like if you, like for example, like working out, right? Like the best time to start working out was like 10 years ago. The second time, best time is now, right? So, when you're 41, you don't want to look back and say, damn, I should have started working out when I was 31, right? So start now. That way in 10 years, you'll say, I'm glad I started working out when I was 31, because look at all this progress that I made or whatever. So I think post 27 is when I started looking at it that way. Like I'm the oldest that I've ever been, but I'm also the youngest I'm ever going to be. And so I have to make decisions. I have to make prudential decisions now, that in a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 7, 10, 20, I'm going to thank my younger self for making those decisions, because your age is just not permanent. Now, the next thing that felt permanent but isn't, and it breaks, there's two things, three things. The first thing that comes to mind is my children are not permanently going to be children. My son's turning 5 next month, and it just felt like he was going to be a baby forever. And he's still my baby, and 5 is still young, is still a kid compared to my 31 years old. And my second baby, he's going to be 2 in August, and he's walking, he's talking, he's got his cute baby voice. But man, just 5 minutes ago, he didn't know how to crawl, and then he was crawling, and then he would take a few steps and he would fall, and it just felt like he was going to be at that forever. And unfortunately, I'm wrong. And of course, the last two is not necessarily me. No, I'm just going to share more. Obviously, the last one is your parents, my parents, your aunts and uncles, right? You get older, they get older. It's how it works. Everyone gets older at the same time. No matter when you were born, as soon as you come into this world, you age with everyone else. And so as you're aging, I understand some people don't have good relationships with their parents and or their extended family, which includes uncles and aunts. But thank God, I have relatively healthy relationships with everyone in my family, I would say. And everyone is getting older. And when I was younger, it just felt like, they're going to be this age for the rest of my life. I'm the one that's going to catch up to them. And obviously, that's not true. So that's the episode, to give you something to think about when you're in pain, suffering, struggling, when you're sacrificing, when it feels like I'm never going to get out of this situation, this is never going to end, this is permanent. Very, very fortunately, you're wrong. Most things in this life are temporary. And when it feels like something is temporary, you're right. And so try to enjoy it, especially if you're not struggling, if you're not sacrificing, if you're not suffering, if you're not in pain, if you're going through something and it brings you joy, brings you happiness, brings you peace, it's just something good, something purposeful, something meaningful, something valuable. Remember, it's temporary. It's going to end. And so do your best to try to enjoy it and not look back and think, those were the good old days, I wish I could go back. Realize I'm in it, I'm in the thick of it, and so I just need to take it in. Excuse me, 2 burps in 1 episode, what's wrong with me? Anyway, let me know what you think, my dear and beloved Dani Flores. Leave me a comment, send me a voice message. All relevant links are in and don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to share the episode. Don't forget to think about this as well. But all relevant links are in the description of the YouTube video, or if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts, or any of the audio platforms, the link tree is in the episode description, and that'll take you to the rest of the links that are in the link tree, like my Instagram, TikTok, how to send me a voice message, my wife's teas, squats or self-care, get in loser, we're going to get iced coffee, get in loser, we're going to lift. I should have been wearing one of those tonight. But until the next episode, until episode 61, this break in between episodes is not permanent. Remember, my dear and beloved Dani Flores, your life is worth living.